Hello and welcome back to another one of our videos on Kenpo self-defense techniques. We're still working through the purple belt syllabus at the moment, and the technique we're looking at today is Snapping Twig. Now, Snapping Twig is a single hand center line push, and we'll be progressing through this technique in our usual manner, first of all taking a look at the technique without a partner and then breaking it down move for move. We'll then be progressing on to a closer look. Now please remember, when we do the closer look section, we're not trying to spoon feed you Kenpo. For us to cover every possible variation, this video would end up being 2 or 3 hours long, if not longer. So all we're trying to do is give you some ideas on the way we look at techniques and inspire you to come up with your own ideas and your own variations. So let's get into Snapping Twig. As I said, we're going to start with the section where we have no partner, so you get an all-round view of the technique itself. The base attack for this technique is a stepping forward centerline push to the chest. The natural reaction to this attack will force you to take a step backwards to absorb the inertia of the push. This attack is likely to cause your arms to flail in a forward and upward manner, trailing behind your body as it is forced backwards. Take advantage of this situation through functionalizing the natural reaction by stepping back to settle into a neutral bow, delivering simultaneous inward horizontal heel palms to the attacking arm. Having the lead heel palm striking to the elbow of your opponent's attacking arm, whilst your rear heel palm strike checks to the inside or rear of his wrist. This defensive response provides the technique its name. The attacking arm is the twig. The action of the twin inward heel palms calls the snapping of the twig. Your opponent's reaction to the pain from the application of fulcruming causes him to cancel his own depth and width zones. Have your leading hand now hook over your opponent's injured arm in the shape of a crane as you immediately begin to pivot into a forward bow, hooking his arm down past your lead hip by the use of frictional pull. This has the effect of moving your opponent forward onto a simultaneously delivered outward handsword to his throat, with your rear hand timed to impact as you finally settle into the forward bow. Keep the motion of your hooking hand going to circle around and deliver an inward hammer fist to the center mass of your opponent's head as you pivot back, settling into another neutral bow. Now immediately deliver a lead arm inward elbow to your opponent's jaw hinge as you simultaneously deliver an inward horizontal heel palm to the opposite side of his jaw, creating a sandwiching effect. When executing the elbow sandwich, ensure your lead arm pivots from the hammer fist's point of contact. Do not get into the habit of dropping your arm prior to executing the inward elbow. We will now proceed on to the extension to Snapping Twig. If you do not require this at your stage of training, you may wish to bypass the next section of this video. Step into a front crossover, moving forward and into your opponent as you deliver a leading arm downward outward hammer fist to his groin, whilst having your rear hand cocked in front of your sternum. As you complete the front crossover, momentarily settle into a front twisted stance, then pivot out into a neutral bow, delivering an upward obscure elbow, if in range, to your opponent's chin, sequentially followed by an upward-outward heel palm claw to his face. Complete the pivot into the neutral bow by delivering a lead heel palm thrust also to his face. Whilst your opponent is backing up and dealing with the last sequence of strikes, pivot into a close kneel stance to deliver a chopping punch to his ribs with your rear hand as your lead hand cocks to the closed side of your head. Pivot back into the neutral bow, following up with an outward horizontal hammer fist to your opponent's head. Now immediately pivot into a forward bow as you deliver a reverse punch to his jaw. Continue to utilize the forward rotational inertia to deliver a stepping through right side kick to the inside of your opponent's knee. From this point of contact, front crossover and cover out. And welcome back. So now we're going to take that closer look at Snapping Twig, and we're going to begin with the attack itself. Now, as we said at the beginning of the video, the attack is a single-handed centerline push to the chest. When our opponent executes his attack, we're attempting to time the defense to coincide with our opponent's straightening of the arm. Now, whether we'd be able to actually snap the arm, as in the name of the technique, is questionable. But we are hoping to be able to at least hyperextend his arm to create pain to stop any further or follow-up attack. Now, it's very unlikely we'd be able to execute Snapping Twig if it was a surprise attack, if our opponent just walked up to us and suddenly from nowhere pushed us in the chest. We'd most probably just likely move back, and if we've got our wits about us, just simply pull a defensive stance in preparation for any follow-up attack. However, other scenarios we could encounter could be us trying to get past our opponent and them stopping us and pushing us back to our point of origin. Or it may be our opponent who's decided to push us themselves using their mass to move us backwards. In each case, we have to time our defense to coincide again with the straightening of the arm. Now, if it became a case where we were slow in our defense and our opponent converted his attack to a pull rather than a push, we may find that we have to convert our initial defense into an offense, basically change the intent. This would mean that our lead hand could potentially end up going straight over the arm to a hammer fist to the face to counter any follow-up attack. This leaves us with an option where we can either carry on with Snapping Twig in its base format, whereas the lead snap is just replaced by the hammer fist, or we can then delete the initial section of the technique and proceed straight into the hammer fist into the elbow sandwich section. So now we're going to proceed onto the section of the technique that follows the snapping of the arm. Here we need to pivot into a forward bow to deliver a rear hand outward hand sword to our opponent's throat. Now, when you drop into the forward bow, it's essential you use the correct weight distribution of 60-40. Too many times I've seen people pull what they believe is a forward bow, but have maintained a 50-50 weight distribution, which is effectively staying in a neutral bow. So when people hit something with mass behind it, they tend to find themselves encountering Newton's third law of motion, which is for every action there's an opposite and equal reaction, and getting knocked back and off balance themselves. So it's essential you use the correct weight distribution and also allow your body weight to drop down forward and diagonally. So this will allow you to settle into your stance to have a sound base and a decent bracing angle to support your strike. Now, whilst we are dropping into the forward bow to deliver the outward hand sword to our opponent's throat, we are simultaneously executing a frictional drag movement on our opponent's attacking arm. This is to bring him forward onto the hand sword. Now, when we execute this frictional drag movement in the initial stages of training, students are taught to do a big, wide, circular movement. This is to round off the corners of any blocky movement they may try to execute and get the fluidity into their base structure. Obviously, as we progress through our Kenpo, we don't want to stay at this big, large movement, we want to shorten it down. So we proceed from the rounding off of the corners to the elongating of the circle, and where we apply an elliptical or oval movement to the strike, which speeds up the movement and increases the force. Now, moving on, we're going to look at the hammer fist followed by the elbow sandwich to our opponent's head. Now, this is done mainly two ways. You can either do the hammer fist to the head and then the elbow sandwich simultaneously with the heel palm and the elbow striking the respective jaw hinges at the same time to create the pressure break to the front of the jaw. Or a lot of people like to do this in a 3 count where the hammer fist is followed by the heel palm and then the elbow on the end. So we get a 1-2-3 action opposed to a 1-2 action. However, whichever of those movements you decide to use, it is important to realise on impact from a hammer fist, our opponent is likely to look away from us. This means he will turn to face the incoming heel palm. So it's more likely you're going to strike him square on the nose than it would be to the jaw hinge. Now, another aspect I like to include in this technique, whether I've hit the jaw hinge with the heel palm or hit my opponent square on the nose, is to grasp the back of his head and secure it in place whilst I deliver the inward elbow. Those of you who are regular viewers of our videos would have no doubt seen our breakdown of the technique lone kimono. And you would also seen the section where I reference a triangle and its family relationship: clutching feathers, lone kimono, glancing salute and snapping twig. If you haven't seen that video, I'll put it in the end card so you can go back and view this section I'm talking about. But when you view it, or if you have already viewed it, please add to that the technique gifted destruction. This technique is exactly the same as snapping twig, but the attack is done at a lower level, and you can actually progress on and use snapping twig as an extension to the technique gifted destruction. Well, thank you once again for joining us here at Combat Fusion Martial Arts on another one of our InfoPod videos on Kenpo self-defense techniques. I hope you're finding this information useful as a supplement to your training. Now, 91% of the people who watch our videos aren't subscribed to our channel, so I'd be really appreciative if you would hit that subscribe button and become one of our subscribers. Also, don't forget to share the video to your friends and give it a like with a thumbs up. Also, if you've got any comments, don't forget you can always put them down in the comment section on this video. We do try to answer all of them. So, this is Andy Seathern from Combat Fusion Martial Arts saying goodbye.